In this video we will show 5 incredible sightings and encounters with mythical creatures around the world. So relax and enjoy. Number 5. Werewolf. The werewolf is a widespread concept in European folklore, existing in many variants, which are related by a common development of a Christian interpretation of underlying European folklore. Their underlying common origin can be traced back to Proto-Indo-European mythology, where lycanthropy is reconstructed as an aspect of the initiation of the warrior class. There are many stories about werewolves or lycanthropy. One is the story of Gilles Garnier. In the 16th century town of Dole, a proclamation was publicly read in the town square. Its contents gave permission for the people to track down and kill a werewolf that had been terrorizing the village. While walking through the forest, a group of peasants heard the screams of a small child accompanied by the howling of a wolf. When they arrived, they saw a wounded child fighting off a monstrous creature whom they later identified as Gilles Garnier. When a 10-year-old boy disappeared in the vicinity of Garnier's home, he was arrested and confessed to being a werewolf. He was then burned at the stake. Another story is that, in 1685, the Bavarian town of Ansbach was being terrorized by a large vicious wolf. The rumors were that the wolf was actually a werewolf whose identity was that of the town's dead mayor. When the wolf was killed, the people of Ansbach dressed the wolf's carcass to resemble their mayor. It was then put on display in the town square and later moved to a museum and later known as the Werewolf of Ansbach. One of the worst ever lycanthropes was the Werewolf of Chalon, otherwise known as the Demon Tailor. He was arraigned in Paris on the 14th of December 1598 on murder charges which were so appalling that the court ordered all documents of the hearing to be destroyed. Even his real name has become lost in history. Burnt to death for his crimes, he was believed to decoy children of both sexes into his shop, and having abused them he would slice their throats and then powder and dress their bodies, jointing them as a butcher cuts up meat. In the twilight, under the shape of a wolf, he roamed the woods to leap out on stray passers-by and tear their throats to shreds. Barrels of bleached bones were found concealed in his cellars as well as other foul and hideous things. He died, it was said, unrepentant and blaspheming. Number 4. Vampire. One of the stories regarding vampire which was recorded, is the Nakakatakot mass vampire attack. In Bulgaria, vampires were said to start out as ghost-like creatures before they could physically rise from their graves. In its early stage, the vampire could only be seen faintly by the human eye. During the night, however, their forms gave off easily noticeable sparks. In 1863, the village of Nakakatakot was reportedly plagued by a mob of young sparkling vampires. The vampires attacked villagers, screamed outside their homes, and threw cow poop at pictures of saints. Although the vampires had not yet taken physical form, they could still be seen sparkling in the streets. An old witch eventually decided that enough was enough and went to a local cemetery. When she found the vampires' graves, she realized that they must have been escaping through holes in their tombs. The witch sealed the holes, and Nakakatakot never experienced trouble with vampires again. Justina Yushkov. In mid-19th century Russia, peasants often blamed vampires for the spread of epidemics. It was thought that the first person to die of an epidemic was a vampire and that the disease could only be stopped if the vampire was killed. During a cholera epidemic in one village in August 1848, a medical officer named Rutsov accused a dead pregnant girl named Justina Yushkov of being a vampire. When some peasants checked her corpse, they saw that her mouth was open, which they took as a sign that she was a vampire. The peasants then cut open Justina's body and discovered that her baby was missing. The child's body was found in Justina's coffin. Believing this to be definite proof that Justina was a vampire, the peasants drove a stake through her mouth. Although they were satisfied, this act disgusted a pastor in the region, and he reported the incident to a local district judge. The vampire of Blau. In the early 14th century, a shepherd named Maslada died in the village of Blau in Bohemia. After his death, Maslada became a vampire, terrorizing the village each night. Amazingly, he could kill a person by only calling out their name, which caused the person to die within 8 days. When the peasants tried pushing a stake through Maslada's heart, he mocked them and said that he would use the stake to ward off dogs. After that failed attempt, a professional executioner was tasked with getting rid of Maslada. The executioner and his attendants moved the vampire out of the village. The men pushed a bunch of stakes into Maslada's body and cremated him to ensure that he stayed dead.